All right, welcome to another edition of It's Just Me, hosted by Brent Fox. I'm going to be pre recording this episode. So today's date that I'm recording is Tuesday, the 13th of February of 2024. The show is going to air Thursday, the 15th of February of 2024. Um, got some real life events going on, so I got to take care of those. So I'm not going to be able to shoot the show the day of. Now, having said that, I'm actually just going to be doing a mixture of the LDBC, which of course is the Lion Den's boxing community, and then the LDFC, which of course is the Lion Den's football community. First, I'm going to go ahead and start off with boxing topics. The first topic, of course, is the signing of the Haney Garcia fight. Devin Haney will be taking on Ryan Garcia April the 20th. I'm very excited about this particular matchup. I think that with Devin Haney's ring IQ, his excuse me, his his fundamentals being very very sound, and then of course more importantly, his punch placement, I think are going to serve as huge factors in the fight, as well as Ryan Garcia's amazing hand speed, his length, and then his power, which you can't really sleep on. So I think that those particular elements from each fighter, once they clash, are going to bring an entertaining chess match, I believe. Both of these fighters actually have a history with each other, especially in the amateurs. They fought 6 times. Each of them won 3 matchups. So what I'm assuming is with those final fights in the amateurs, they were very close and competitive. And I think this one will also be surprisingly close and competitive as long as it lasts. Um, Now, that's not to say anything just yet, but I will have a 20 by 20 series once the fight comes a little bit closer into fruition. Um, but needless to say, of course, I'm very, very excited about that particular matchup. I also believe that the little scuffle that happened last weekend kind of helped boosted the fight. And then, of course, there are press conferences where they're going back and forth with each other, which adds, of course, entertainment value and also helps the fight get built up as well. You have to have tension in order to kind of sell these type of events. And to be quite honest with you, I think that it will actually do well. Now, it may or may not put up, of course, tank numbers, and I think that's what most detractors will probably bring up. But I do believe that it will do well as far as selling pay per view if it actually does that. There wasn't anything mentioning pay per view as of yet, but I believe with this type of matchup, that's going to happen. But needless to say, I'm very excited either way about it, and we'll either purchase the fight or put in for the fight somewhere to where a group of us can actually just watch it, just as just as a support mechanism. To be quite honest with you, now the other top boxing topic that I want to talk about was Sabril Matias actually signing over to the Zone slash Matchroom. Now, Sabril Matias is actually an IBF champion in the same division of 140 pounds, along with Haney and Garcia. Now, Matias, who is a very exciting fighter, is 20-1 with 20 KOs. I believe that the one loss that he actually had to, I believe, a Petros Ayanyan was later avenged by making Ayanyan quit, I believe, in between the 6th and 7th round, if I'm not mistaken. So really, Matias has actually defeated every man that he faced, which is quite impressive. Matias also has solid fundamentals, but he has very, very explosive power, and yeah, also has very good hand speed as well. So I'm assuming that since this particular signing took place, He may even be participating on the undercard of the Haney Garcia fight, and then he may actually wind up fighting the winner. I think that that was probably the end game with that particular signing, him being able to fight the Haney Garcia winner to unify and then hopefully become undisputed. Um, Now, the other thing that we want to make sure that we pay close attention to is a possible fight between Joshua Buatsi and Anthony Yard. Now, I know this these are fighters from across the pond, but I think the matchup between these two gentlemen is going to be pretty good. Buatsi, who is 18-0 with 13 knockouts, and then Yard is 25-3 with 24 KOs. Now, each of these gentlemen, of course, are known to be very explosive punchers. I think because of Anthony Yard's experience level with high caliber fighters, I think that may actually wind up serving him well against Buatsi. But from what I've seen from Buatsi, he actually, excuse me, is a very savvy and then he a very savvy fighter, and then he also has some power of his own to actually kind of contend with. Now, it is true that, of course, the level of competition that he's faced versus Yard is not quite the same. But I think if Yard is hit cleanly, especially with a left hook, it can make things interesting, is what I would probably say. If Watsi actually lands that particular left hook, yeah, it could make things very, very interesting. Um, and as I was actually researching this possible matchup, I noticed, and shouts out to BoxRec because I did use information to try to look up rankings and things of that nature. And for the most part, they are pretty reliable. I did notice um, that boxing politics has actually struck again with this one. The BoxRec, for whatever reason, had ranked a former opponent of Anthony Yard's, Lyndon Arthur, number 13, over Anthony Yard. Now, of course, Arthur had just recently lost to Dimitri Bivol, which, of course, he's the highest ranked light heavyweight. Okay, so maybe that had something to do with it prior to the fight. Maybe they brought his ranking up prior to the fight. And then, of course, Anthony Yard just defeated Marco Nikolic just last weekend. Now, the interesting thing I found about that was um, Lyndon Arthur and Anthony Yard had a back and forth type series. Arthur, I believe, won like split decision over Anthony Yard. Yard came back to avenge that particular decision by actually knocking out Lyndon Arthur. And I'm not sure how Arthur was able to get himself ranked over Anthony Yard. But it appears as though when I did a little bit of research on BoxRec, the justification may have been that Arthur went on some 4-fight winning streak, um, while Yard, of course, defeated one opponent and then he fought Artur Beterbiev. And of course, unfortunately, he fell to the hands of him by an 11th round TKO. Um, I think that may be the justification behind Lyndon Arthur actually being ranked over and still now ranked over. He's number 13 as far as light heavyweights are concerned over Anthony Yard's 17th rank. Um, and even though, of course, Yard won his particular fight and then Arthur lost his particular fight, it's still a bit confusing why. Excuse me, especially head to head when the Yard actually knocked out Arthur, he would not be ranked over Arthur because of that. But moving on to a totally different subject, which we're going to switch gears to the LDFC which of course again is a Lions Den's football community. Um, I'm going to just do a brief discussion about my thoughts of Super Bowl 58. Now, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs had actually defeated the San Francisco 49ers. Let me make sure that I have the correct score here. Just a second. And this is what happens when you say it's just me and you do things live. Give me just a second. Not so much live. It's live now, but it ain't. but it ain't live. Okay. So let's see. And I'm just trying to get the score. I know that I think they won like 25 19 or something like that. But I'm just checking to make sure. Hang on. Okay. Okay, so yeah, it was 25-22. I'm so sorry. So the accurate score was 25-22, of course, in overtime. Um, Now, of course, I pretty much knew um, that even though statistically the 49ers had a better team, that the Kansas City Chiefs and Taylor Swift and her Swifties would not be denied. America was not about to have Taylor Swift be victimized again. Um, so, I just kind of felt an energy that, of course, they were going to win. There was just no denying that particular machine. And furthermore, and more importantly, this happened. Okay, you got to look at the Kansas City Chiefs playoff run. They defeated the Dolphins, which was a very high ranked offense. They defeated the Bills, which was a very well balanced team. And then, of course, they beat the number one seed Baltimore Ravens, unfortunately, for my brothers JB and Jared O11 Green. And then, of course, they go to the Super Bowl and then they wind up having to face off against a team that, if you look on paper, is like heads and shoulders above them. Okay. The Chiefs defense was a bend but don't break defense initially when they came into the playoffs. Now, of course, as I mentioned before on my previous show, that this particular defense was actually not only sustaining or holding opponents under a certain amount of points, but they were also creating turnovers as well. So last Sunday was no different when, of course, Christian McCaffrey made an uncharacteristic fumble, and then, of course, the Chiefs tried to take advantage, but they just really couldn't. They started off sputtering at first. And so did the 49ers as well. It was a pretty slow game offensively, but shout outs to both defenses for actually making it that way. A lot of people just kind of grew impatient about that and was just kind of wondering when there was going to be more offense. But if you have good defenses, that typically just doesn't happen. Um, I think that towards the second half, even though the 49ers were actually in the lead, you could kind of feel like a momentum shift um, once the Kansas City Chiefs, I think they wound up like kicking another field goal. So it was like 10-6 at halftime, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so they come out, of course, they go flat. Third quarter was the beginning of the third quarter was pretty much the same thing. And then, of course, moving forward, the Mahomes magic happened. Now, again, a close friend of mine and I were actually discussing a game, and you absolutely cannot allow Patrick Mahomes to hang around. And unfortunately, that is what happened with the 49ers. There were some really big missed opportunities. There was a very big missed opportunity with a potential Deebo Samuel touchdown pass. Whew, that one still hurts me thinking about it. I mean, because Deebo had him beat, and all he had to do was just put it there, and that probably could have changed the game for good. But that is a very familiar thing. Here's why. Uh, there was also a Super Bowl in Miami where Jimmy Garoppolo missed Emmanuel Sanders on a similar play. Wasn't quite the same play, it was a similar play. And that unfortunately changed the game for them as well. Now, a lot of people are saying that it's the Kaepernick curse, which I won't debate. But at the same time, I just think that, of course, more importantly, lack of execution pretty much caused something like that to happen. So I don't really think that it's the Kaepernick curse, but it very well could be. I mean, there's two Super Bowls now that haven't gone the way that they needed to. And of course, the 49ers actually had the lead to initially begin with. Now, also, I think that the incident between Travis Kelce and then Andy Reid, I mean, anybody that's actually played ball kind of knows that there are going to be situations to where people get frustrated on the sidelines. It's a very intense game. You got guys that are constantly slamming into each other, and we are out there trying to physically dominate each other. Like it's not a situation to where you can really be kind and courteous out there. You have to become something else. You definitely have to become something else to be out there to be playing. Even though I consider myself a very nice and respectable human being, um, when I'm not in competition or being competitive, um, I'm not gonna lie to you. Something actually cuts on, and I'm not a nice person, like at all. Not a nice person. When that turns on, not a nice person at all. My alter ego, B Fox, comes out. He's very aggressive. Very, very aggressive is the nicest way that I could actually put that. Okay, so snapping back into just the person that's behind the lens here, uh, the the intensity kind of in that particular moment may have caused Travis Kelce to kind of inadvertently bump into Andy Reid. I don't think it was a situation where he was just like, "Arr, you know, I'm just gonna try Andy." Um, but at the same time, I mean, great players are gonna do that. They're gonna demand things when situations kind of get intense, so they could actually make an impact and get things turned around. So, I mean, we've actually had that, of course, with Antonio Brown. Now, he didn't run into Coach Tomlin or nothing like that, or shove him or anything like that, but he has had incidents where he's knocked over water coolers. He's also had an infamous incident where he sat out a game or whatnot because he felt like he was not getting enough opportunities to actually make things happen. Um, and I know that may not be the greatest example to provide, but it is an example of how intense someone can actually be when they are trying to make an impact. And they're, of course, a great player. Probably a better example would, I hate using this person as an example. She be 12. Usually screams and curses out offensive assistants, offensive coordinators. Heck, I'm sure that he's probably had an exchange behind closed doors with Coach Belichick. Um, but as much as she screams and hollers and all of that other good stuff, I don't think that there has been any reports with physical contact with her and coaches, but I'm sure it has gotten really, really close. Um, but yeah, any of those great players are actually going to demand the ball to make things happen. So I mean, that's to me, it's a non-factor. It's not a real story to me. But I mean, things are very intense out there on the field, and you're going to be aggressive. You are going to want the ball when it's crunch time because you want to be the one that actually made the difference. I definitely understand that. So just kind of moving on uh, from the Super Bowl to a more favored subject of mine, which is my Pittsburgh Steelers. So there have been, of course, some early offseason moves. The big one was, of course, obtaining coach Arthur Smith, who was a former head coach of the Atlanta Falcons. And then before that, more importantly, he was an offensive coordinator for the Tennessee Titans. Now, of course, why that's more important, as more than it is the head coaching job, is this. Yeah, with him being the offensive coordinator, all he basically has to do is concentrate his efforts on basically creating favorable matchups for the offense, uh, and then of course creating plays that highlight those particular favorable matchups week to week. Now, from what I understood, Coach Smith likes to use heavy tight end formations. And then occasionally, what he'll do, of course, is use multi receiver sets and then utilize them as well. Now, there has been some talk in the Steelers fans football community that, of course, Coach Smith can utilize his receivers pretty well. Um, Having said that, there were some new additions to the coaching staff for the Steelers, one of which is new quarterback coach Tom Arth. Now, his prior experience was as a pass game coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers. And then there was also a new wide receivers coach, Mr. Zach Azani. Now, prior to him coming to the Steelers, he was a wide receivers coach for both the New York Jets and then the Denver Broncos. Now, as a wide receiver coach for the Denver Broncos, he had a hand in actually helping Cortland Sutton get elected to the Pro Bowl his second year um, with Coach Azani, as far as just taking him under the wing and then helping him, of course, with his route running and then, of course, body placement, hand positioning, things of that nature. And then also, he was a wide receivers coach for the Bears. And then prior to that, and this is what really caught my eye, he was a wide receivers coach and also a pass coordinator for the NCAA, which means that he coached high caliber schools, Division I schools rather, and he had done that for 18 years. Okay, so he spent 18 years doing this prior to coming to the NFL, which I think is nothing short of amazing, to be quite honest with you. Um, that to me proves that he's a stable coach. He can be dependable and relied upon to try to aid the wide receiver core. And I expect improvement. Having said all of that, I think that our receiver core will probably produce a lot better than what people would actually expect. And then we actually picked up an offensive assistant, and his name is Mateo Kabui. His prior experience is that he was an Atlanta Falcons offensive line assistant. He was also an entry level assistant for the Denver Broncos. And then prior to that, he was a graduate assistant for Georgia Southern. And then for my brother's Coach 67 and then Jared O11 Green. He was a running backs coach for Florida A&M, which he was an alum. Um, and this, of course, the information that I'm getting, that I'm reciting off, was courtesy of the Pittsburgh Steelers official website. I want to make sure that I cite my sources. So, of course, BoxRec was where I got my information as far as the records for the fighters, and then also the rankings as well. Um, Excuse me. And now I believe it's time to just go ahead and wrap up the show. But before I do that, I want to give a big salute to my brothers, Coach 67 Sports TV. He has a show, Bayou Sports, that usually airs on Saturdays around 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, I believe. And it's usually on most, if not all, social media platforms. Now, my brothers, Jared O11 Green, JB, Joe Townsend, and the incomparable Jay Good. Also have a show along with Coach 67, which is the Southern Ballers. Now, occasionally we'll air on Fridays, of course, and then we definitely air on Sundays on YouTube. That's around 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then I also want to make sure that I do this, okay? Because I, even though my intentions were good, I keep messing up. So I want to make sure that we give my brother Iron Trill Will his flowers, and recommend that you guys watch his Free Smoke Fridays, which are going to be on Fridays, of course, at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then he has Soul Man Sundays, usually around 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, which is going to be at noon on Sundays. And those that's also on the YouTube platform. So I just want to make sure that I acknowledge my brothers, and want to make sure that we build this particular community, the LDBC and the LDFC as well. All right. So that is going to actually conclude this week's show. I thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.